didn't want to install or something.
Yes, it's technology.
Yeah.
And now we are live also on LinkedIn, so we can start.
Perfect.
Can we start?
Yes, we can start. We are live also. People are still joining in. The recording will be available on Water Europe's LinkedIn account.
Okay. So, even though with a bit of delay, and I'm awfully sorry for the quality of my voice today, but I think that I got something like called the flu or something like that. But anyway, I'm here, still alive. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this online seminar, this webinar on exploring the effects of the climate change on biodiversity, which is a regular appointment, which is carried out, organized in the framework of the ARSINOE project, which is Climate Resilient Regions through Systemic Solutions and Innovation, which is a project funded by Horizon 2020, the framework program for research and innovation. And as I mean, really very good and unbelievable, I would say, ambitions and objective to achieve. And within the ARSINOE project, Water Europe, I'm Andrea Rubina, I'm the Director of Operations of Water Europe. Water Europe organizes on a regular basis these online seminars that have also the objective of focusing on different challenges due to climate impact on the water and water-related sectors. As you know, we are in a well understandable water crisis. Water scarcity, it is on the lips of almost everybody. Climate change is also affect our daily life, but then there are many aspects that might be not so well evident as I mean what we can see from newspapers and other sorts of information and media. And today we're talking about the impact, the effects on climate change on biodiversity. Biodiversity is basic, it's vital, I mean, to a sustainable society, because through biodiversity, we can preserve the capacity of our ecosystem to be resilient, really, in the long time. And concerning water, it's extremely important in terms of sustainability, in terms of security of the water ecosystems. And today we want to explore the effects of climate change on biodiversity, taking into account that if you look at Europe, from the 70s up to today, we have lost something like more than 70% of the biodiversity in French waters, which is quite a scaring figure. And of course, I mean, this is an impact of many things: pollution, the change of the ecosystems, human anthropogenic activities, but impact on biodiversity has long-term effects on our society and our capacity of dealing with the new challenges on the increased demand on water resources in our society. So how this webinar will be is being organized. Of course, it's, as I said, I mean, under the framework of the ARSINOE project, and it is supported through the working group on water and biodiversity over Europe. And today we have the leadership of the working group on biodiversity, and we have a very important guest today because we have also. Of course, representative and the coordinator of the ARSINOE project, Crisi Laspidou. Many thanks for being with us today. And then we have also another sister project, because there are other projects that have been funded to the semi-core of ARSINOE. We have the Transformer project, the Impetus project, and they're going to have a panel discussion at the end of this seminar, online seminar, in order to take, power messages and build and contribute to build the voice on how to find systemic solutions in order to create climate resilient regions able to cope with the climate change and related impacts. So it's a welcome to everybody. It's a welcome to the participants that are participating today through the direct streaming, through the webinar, and to all the other participants through the social media, to the web streaming. And let's start. So we start with the keynote, and I really welcome to take the floor Sarah Iman and Pira Leskinen, especially leader and co-leader of the working group of all the Europe on water and biodiversity. So the floor is yours. Many thanks once again, and all the best for this very interesting webinar of today.
Thank you very much, Andrea, for your introduction. Is somebody else going to share the presentation, or do I have to do it somehow?
It's better if you do it, and if each speaker shares their own presentation, because we avoid the next and any technical issues. So it's better if you share your own presentation.
Do you prefer, Sarah, that I would share it?
Oh, that's fine.
I share it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, before starting the content presentation, we also want to give a very short introduction of the working group Biodiversity, Water and Biodiversity in Water Europe. As Andrea already stressed, there is a big link between biodiversity and water, and it's not going well. And we all know that biodiversity is decreasing in and around water sharply. As a working group, we try to really show what we can do. We try to show perspectives, especially for the water sector, to biodiversity. Climate change is one of the stressors, together with pollution. So that's probably that's the connection here today. But all the people that are working in the water sector can help to improve water and biodiversity. So our main aim as a working group is to show how, and also to provide advice for policies for the future to start going in the right direction finally. In this working group, we have Sascha de Rijk, an ecologist from the Netherlands, from a research institute. We have Laura Wendling, a specialist in nature-based solutions, working. She was working in Finland, and she's now going to work in Norway for a research institute as well. We have Tina Ilersek, assistant professor in Ljubljana, Slovenia. Her expertise is algae and aquatic ecotoxicology. And Pia probably can introduce herself as well, but she's the stormwater management specialist at Turku University. Also working a lot on hazardous substances for water. I am Sarah Eman, working in a water systems advisory department of an engineering company in the Netherlands as well. So together we try to, from Europe-wide and different specializations, to find good alternatives and possibilities to work on biodiversity while you are working on water. Can you show me the next slide, Pia? We want to shortly go with you through the goals of the first white paper that we've just submitted. It's not finalized yet, but it's with Water Europe right now, and I think we can start spreading the main results here already, because they were important for how we think that we can go forward. As I already said, it sort of coincides with the goal of our working group to focus on the role of the entire water sector, which includes utilities, companies, water-intensive industries, but also the water authorities. they all have a special place in their possibilities to work on biodiversity while they are working with water. They are involved in land use planning, they're involved in restoration projects, they're involved in, they need good and clean water, so they are in a unique position to drive positive changes. So that is the message that we want to give with our paper and also as a group. And to reach that, we want to give positive examples from solutions that already exist, from projects that have resulted in positive changes already, to show that it is actually possible. And it's not even always a matter of more money or complicated solutions, but even the mindset of while you are making a change to make your water system climate proof can already make a positive change for biodiversity as well. Taking it into account has become just a habit, I guess. Next slide. We relate to different policies within the European Union, of course. We think that the experience that has already been gained with the implementation of the Water Framework Directive, in which especially the water authorities, but also other water-related industries, companies, have their role and have to deal with the consequences. We can help those. These can help us to implement also the biodiversity strategy in the water sector more effectively. We see that the ambitious Green Deal requires cooperation and coherence between Water Framework Directive and its successors, and 2000, and also the biodiversity strategy. So we need to cooperate as biodiversity leaders and water leaders to work together to reach the goals of both. So they're so intimately linked that you cannot actually take them apart anymore if you want to get real solutions. And thirdly, we see that the Corporate Sustainability Directive, which has started from this January already for the biggest companies, requires companies to really start recording or to write down to prove what they do to improve biodiversity. For the water-related companies, we see this as a huge chance also to combine working on those two together in a positive way. Pia, I think you take over from here.
Okay, thanks.
Please introduce yourself first.
Hello, I'm Pia Leskinen from Turku University of Applied Sciences, as Sarah already told, and I'm the co-lead of the working group Water and Biodiversity. And I'm a water engineer from my basic background. After that, I've done a PhD on more like toxicological things, but I see myself as an example of a water engineer and not an ecologist who wants to know what to do about the biodiversity while I'm working on water. And I think one thing that I would like to mention about the background of our white paper was that it's sort of the idea of the white paper maybe emerged partly from the observation that we didn't have many people participating in the meetings of Water and Biodiversity Working Group because many people said that, well, I don't really have a link for biodiversity in my work. And even though biodiversity and water may seem as an obvious linkage, people are not always recognizing their role in the biodiversity. For example, we have a lot of currently a lot of very global challenges like climate change, and which imposes a lot of different measures connected to water, for example, flood protection. But we're not always thinking about biodiversity when we do flood protection measures. We do water storage, we try to enhance water retention, but that's also often done with no further benefits for biodiversity. Whereas we could, if we would think of it, we could really easily, and with almost the same money, we could also reach very significant benefits for the biodiversity. If we would just think about the water storage in a way that it would also benefit the ecosystem, the biodiversity. So from that, I think from that observation that people are not always recognizing how important role they have or could have in protecting the biodiversity and leading the way of the society towards more sustainable land use, water use, and so on. So that's, I think, at least for me, it was the push for working on the white paper to try to spread the message over the water sector that always take into account the biodiversity while you're working on water. If you're doing flood protection, please think about the biodiversity. If you're taking water for drinking water, please think about the needs of the ecosystem. If you're purifying wastewater, please think about the impacts of the wastewater on the biodiversity. What you can do to prevent and protect the biodiversity while still doing what you should with the water. So that's, I guess, one of the first messages we have with the paper. And I think with the paper, as Sarah already mentioned, that we did recognize several challenges and bottlenecks, but we didn't want to stay around them for too long. We wanted to go on and encourage and spread a message of encouragement for all people that we already have. Of course, for example, these different biodiversity analysis tools. We are still lacking data related to biodiversity, but then again, we already have a lot of tools and a lot of data that we are not using really. So many of the tools that have been developed by the scientists for the biodiversity assessments, they are not really adapted for local, like grassroots level use. But they will never be adapted to those conditions if we don't start using them. So just let's start using the tools that have been developed and learn by doing and improve them on the way. So then in 10 years, we will have very, very well adapted tools for whatever we need. And we also have a lot of data already that is underutilized. So please look what you already have and start using it, and things will improve on the way, even if they're not perfect just currently. Then there are a lot of examples, basically, that you can make a significant change to the biodiversity if you really aim for it. But it was surprisingly difficult actually to find these examples to our white paper. People are not really sharing the success stories. At least they are not loud enough, because we were really struggling partly for finding these examples, and I think the third and fourth messages are both related a little bit to the same thing. Share the examples that the positive examples, so that you can encourage the others to act. And many of these successful examples that we found they were very strongly based on multi-stakeholder collaboration. And water is actually a wonderful thing to bring together people, because water is important for all of us. It's not only important for the ecologists or environmental people, it's important for all people. So it's also something that can bring together people that are not already in the beginning like-minded, or that are not located in the same silo. But you can really bring very different stakeholder groups together and try to solve the water issues together. And that can also lead to multi-benefits also to other fields than just strictly water. Then I think it's your turn, Sarah.
To show to not stay in our message, but also really show like how could you do this, we decided that we'll just shortly describe 3 different examples, which I think the third is basically consisting of 2 examples of us, both of us. The first is on creating new nature. The second one is improving water quality and the trout stock. So really, while working on water, you take into account biodiversity. And the third one is when you make new developments, just take biodiversity into account. So basically, the messages Pia has just described, but then concrete. And what you see is that they all contain different aspects, which often come back. It's about innovative partnerships. It's about types of funding which are not normally used. It's about including people, citizens in your project. It's about learning while doing. So don't wait until the tools are perfect, but just start using them in order to perfectionalize them in due time. And it's learning by doing. So just nobody knows exactly where we are going, but we learn while we do it, and we share these successes with others so they can go on with that. I will start with a first example, Pia, which is a very big Dutch project. You see it here. This is part of Lake IJssel, the huge lake in the middle of the Netherlands. This part called Markermeer had a really water quality issues, and then nature monuments, but also different nature organizations, but also different ministries wanted to do something about this issue. And how they did it finally is starting to make a plan, and then they got subsidies from weird places. They got subsidies from a lottery. They were supported by banks, because everybody thought, well, this is a wonderful project that I want to also connect my name to, but also we want to show that we can develop new things together. So what has been done is that a set of islands, which you can see at numbers 1, 2, 3, have been created. And the idea was that these islands will help filtering the water and improving biodiversity for the entire lake. Whereas I'm not going to say that everything has been a success from the first start and everything is improving right away. What we did do is make beautiful new landscapes, and there's a lot of research has been going on from the start because of this working together of all these different parties, which has also finally involved research institutes. New nature was created, it was monitored. We see what is happening there. We see that especially the insect species are developing very quickly, and that brings about a whole change of the ecosystem, because that's also going to change the amount of fish and the types of fish which are there. They're also then influencing the birds again, and the vegetation is developing with it. So we are creating a change in this whole environment, which is in due time also going to affect the rest of Lake Marken. I don't think it will be enough to make a real good water quality in the whole lake, but we are starting to make a difference there, and we have a lot of positive side effects. Lelystad, you see the city right nearest to it, has also educated a whole group of citizens that are now 3 times a year they're collecting all types of insects on the island, and together with the city ecologists from Lelystad, they're doing determination of what types of insects are there. So there's a lot of involvement of different type of people, and of course it's a nice outing to go to these islands. So you see that a lot of different groups are now involved in dealing with new nature to improve biodiversity while working on the water quality of this area. So we think that this is a very nice example on, well, nobody exactly knew what to do from the start. A lot has gone wrong, a lot had to be redone, but we're learning together. And even also engineering companies have taken part in doing all that research, just also to learn from it themselves, so we know better what to do if we do similar types of projects. Probably not right at the same place, but well, dredging and creating new islands is something that happens in a lot of places throughout the world. So it was very interesting for those types of companies as well. That's one example.
Thank you. Next example is from Finland, from a project called Resist. It's also a project aiming at improving the climate resilience of regions in Europe. I don't actually know if it's from the same call than ARSINOE, for example, but at least it's on a very similar topic. We are a partner in Resist, and in southwest Finland we have a large-scale demonstration for improving the water retention capacity of the whole region, which has been recognized as a crucial means of increasing the climate resilience of the region. And we did a regulatory study on stormwater regulations that are used by local authorities to guide private property owners to plan stormwater management measures in the lots. And these regulations include this sort of, for example, maybe some of you know the blue biotope factor from Berlin originally, but this in Finland it's called blue-green factor, and it's aiming at guiding property owners to both improve the water retention, water storage capacity of the lot, but also the green infra and green coverage. But we found, during this study, we found that still, even though this regulation is there, some of the property owners, they really come up with very ambitious plans for stormwater management that really benefits or not only the biodiversity and water management, but also provides beautiful landscapes and multi-benefits for the residents. And then on the right side, you see this water storage structure, but which doesn't really provide any benefits for the biodiversity. It sure does provide some water storage, and I think it can provide some fun for the kids who can start throwing all those rocks to the water storage well, as soon as they get there, but still, I think this is a sort of a demonstration of how difficult sometimes it is to pass through the message all the way to the local level actors who really do the realization of these structures. For example, even in this right side picture, in the original plans, they had actually had some green vegetation around this pond, but then somehow it had disappeared from the realization of the project. So now it was only this gravel. But the positive message is that it is possible to reach multiple benefits if you do consider biodiversity in stormwater management. Then the next example is also from Finland. I think it could be from many other countries as well, but this is a joint venture of water utilities, municipalities, citizens, and companies actually to restore urban brooks in Finland. These pictures actually are my own pictures from Turku, but the example in the white paper is from Helsinki. In Helsinki, the local environmental authority and water utilities, they have reintroduced fish like salmon trutta, this local salmon species, into the urban brooks. The city has made a lot of different measures to improve the water quality of the urban brooks. Companies have, for example, they have provided funding for these restoration projects, but also they have organized like well-being days at work, spending a day like some companies have had all their personnel spend a day by the brook and restoring the brook, some spawning sites in the brook. The girl in the left side is a student who has participated in biological inventories, like the holding a crayfish there, so there has been a lot of citizens also involved in the restoration activities. And this cooperation doesn't only cover the actual restoration activities and introduction of fish into the brooks, but also continuous monitoring. In Helsinki, for example, there is a very active citizen movement for protection of these brooks, and whenever they see, for example, an unusual leakage of color in the water of the brook, they call the authorities and report that there is something happening here in the brook now, or if they see an activity that might threaten the fish in the brook, they contact the authorities. So there is a sort of a ongoing action to protect these brooks jointly with the citizens, companies, and authorities.
And this is another type of development that we're using. Well, based on the idea, we have so much data and we know so much. Let's start with what we do have and try to make that into information that we can actually start improving biodiversity with. What you see here is a picture of the different channels in a city somewhere in the Netherlands, and we show whether these zones in and around the water are suitable for certain species, and we base that on observation networks from like which species are actually around, because there's no point in making the environment suitable for a species which is, well, very far away for us. It's easier just to start from a zone where the species actually live, and how can we sort of adapt the network, the water network around it to enable this species to spread further. In this case, it's about a dragonfly, a specific type of dragonfly. I'm not an insect specialist, but which requires certain areas for living, but also requires water depth and channel width with a certain limit to be able to displace himself from one region to the other where he feels at home. And in this way, we have created like the green spots are actually places where the species can easily go from one place to another. So he can reach it from a place where he actually feels at home, and he can move to all these different spots. And you see where it goes yellow, it gets harder. You might just go there for a little bit, but he will not start migrating by himself. And when it starts getting red, he's just unable to go there. There's too much distance without suitable circumstances to go there. Well, this is an example for one species, but we did this for several fish and insects, and also on the land side, because it can show very clearly, like how can you adapt, how and where can you adapt your channel, your water network in such a way that improvement in biodiversity is most effective. Some places you have very large gaps between different places, and then it's hard to connect. But if you see here on the right-hand side, you see a few places which are just not connected, which implies that if you just make small changes, probably the animal will start spreading more through the city. So this is a way that we try to, especially in cities, develop green-blue networks, we call them, where the species which are living in and around the city already can start connecting and become more resilient to climate change, to almost everything, because just they get what they need. And we look at migration, but we also look at nesting possibilities, for example, for different types of birds. We look at what do they need to have enough to feed on. So yeah, you can develop this to help communities to take effective measures to improve biodiversity while working on their water system anyhow, because there's a lot of things that have to be done on the water system throughout every year in the Netherlands. This was our last example. I hope that we have inspired you with some nice ways in which you can actually start working on biodiversity just while doing your work on water. And as I said, this very much relates to the effects of climate change, in the sense that well, we can just make the lives of many species easier, so they can also they are more resilient towards this climate change actions. I saw there was already a very nice question in the chat. Is it okay if I ask Pia to answer that question right now? Or is it later on? I don't know.
Let's have a minute. We are a bit behind the schedule. On top, many thanks, for the presentation. Both of you, really inspiring presentation with a lot of examples. We have, the question and answer session with the panel discussion at the end of the webinar. Yep. So we are collecting together, all the questions. Then we will go through the questions with all of you. And so many thanks. Really, inspiring examples. I was really happy to see that things are moving, into the right direction. Now we go into the project, the ARSINOE project that's offered the opportunity of creating, organizing all these webinars and having so many experts able to speak and to gather together and give their experience. And now is the time of Professor Krisi Laspidou, which is also Vice President of Water Europe and in charge of the research and innovation envelope. So welcome, Krisi. So your contribution will be about using remote sensing and citizen science databases to assess urban diversity for sustainable cityscapes. And you're going to present a case study of Athens in Greece. So the floor is yours. Many thanks.
Okay. Thank you so much, Andrea. Always a pleasure to be here. I know I have very little time, right? Just 5 minutes, if I'm not mistaken. Short time. All right. So I'll do my best to do this. All right. So the ARSINOE project that I'm happy to coordinate and especially focus on the Athens case study, which I also lead. So very, very briefly, for those that don't know, ARSINOE is a 15 million euro project. It's a missions project. It has 41 partners, coordinated by the University of Thessaly, and runs for 48 months. We're past the half point, and 9 case studies in Europe that I will say very, very briefly. But we focus on climate resilient regions through systemic solutions and innovation. So if I had to put a hashtag, it would be resilience, hashtag innovations, and systemic. Those are the things that we focus on. So 9 case studies all around Europe. I will not go through all of them due to the short time, but we focus here on the first, which is an urban case study. So when we walked in Athens, when we were writing the proposal, we asked what we could do, and we offered many different solutions. And for most, they like, yeah, we know that, we've seen that. What we need is biodiversity, because that we don't know. All the other technological advances, platforms, blah, blah, we pretty much have, or we have access to, but we don't know how to measure biodiversity. And we think that we need to start looking into this, especially facing the new challenges. The extreme heat is one of the issues that we focus on in Athens, one of the climate hazards that we focus on. But so in our philosophy is that we do not come with preset issues. We go to the living lab, so we organize, we bring all the stakeholders together around the same table, and we develop a vision, and then we do this, how we get there. So we develop the pathways to get there. So one of the visions would be to know biodiversity and to try to improve it. Of course, as you understand, not easy in a city like Athens that is has so much cement. See, the green space that one should have is, I think, according to the World Health Organization, because green also has health effects. So green makes us healthier because we have a chance to walk, we fight obesity, and then there's also the mental and the social elements that are very important. People can meet, there is the sense of neighborhood, sense of ownership, and of course the aesthetics, the pleasure you get out of listening to birds, or the natural environment, which is so rare here in Athens, unfortunately. But this is the fact that the city was interested in recording biodiversity was really important. It seems that there is a desire to understand where biodiversity comes from and what are the some of the variables that might be important. So we went into and we developed this publication that the work is now published. So our goal would be to find ways that, of course, one could go out with campaigns and pay people, I don't know, biologists, and there is things that you can do, even eDNA, where you can see what animals are found where. But this is expensive and it requires a lot of time and it requires specialized personnel that might be difficult to do. So our goal here would be to try to understand biodiversity in the city and relying only on Copernicus data, for example, or data that would be easy to find from the city, and not data that would require actual specialized people going out. And then, of course, do this with the involvement of citizens, because if the citizens are engaged, that's the only way that they can appreciate, and they can ask from the city people, from the leaders, from the mayor, to give them more green and to understand the benefits of it. So we wanted the engagement of people, and we wanted the ease of doing this recording and understanding what are the variables that promote biodiversity more than others, and how much. This is the idea, and then to give them some results that are visual and interpretable. So what we did is we devised this urban habitat framework. So we pretty much recorded all these other variables, not actual biodiversity, but what promotes biodiversity. So green area, or what is adverse for biodiversity. For example, sealed surfaces, not natural cement, or high buildings, or high people densities, or traffic, or road network, or noise. All these different things that we knew play a role in biodiversity. We mapped them, we found them from the global human settlement layer of the Copernicus urban atlas and land cover. So we went to Copernicus and tried to find data that would give us a picture of what's happening in Athens, throughout Athens, and of course some national data sets for street trees, which is an extra thing that we had, and noise we got from a different study that was done. So we put all these variables together, and then we cluster. We use this k-means clustering to identify the optimal number of clusters. So these clusters would give us habitats, urban habitats. So same characteristics would group together, and then you would know the differences in terms of how good those places would be for biodiversity. And then, because you have the classes, but then how do you validate? Then we used citizen science data that have already been collected and are being collected as we speak through our campaigns, because we really focus on this, and we have a whole module that runs on citizen science. We do it with schools, and we're really happy to see a lot of students being interested. Okay, so where do we get this citizen science data? We go to GBIF, which is a global biodiversity information facility. So this facility is a database, basically, that has collected all citizen science data that have been collected in the past and that are verified and of verifiable quality in Athens. I mean, you can cut these data sets and define what has been recorded in Athens. And of course, what is being recorded is added on top of that. And so you have a data set that is there to use. These are some of the variables that we found from, as I said, from Copernicus. And with these, we devised, the different clusters of Athens that are shown here. And we have the non-residential, this is, we came up with new names that I don't have here, updated names. So one was parts of the city that are very industrial and not much is going on. Others are the green clusters, the urban green cluster that had quite a bit of green. Even in Athens, you find some green areas. And then there is a road cluster that has a lot of the transportation networks, and the one that are really high density. I mean, there are those old neighborhoods in Athens that are very, very packed with people, and you know them. So if you this is all the data that went in. So this is Athens in those layers that we combined to create the clusters that I showed you, and you can see the variability in temperature, number of hot days, imperviousness. For example, most of it is very impervious. This is imperviousness is here. And this is water. For example, there is only one little spot that has water in Athens. The rest is blank. This is a little lake that there is in the National Garden in Athens. So you see all this different data that we mapped. Okay, let me go to the next one. Okay, so then we took, so these are our clusters, and then we took the data from the GBIF, as I told you, from the GBIF portal, and we map those observations. So these are the observations that we found, and we could sort out what is there. Of course, most of them are in the green cluster. You see, a lot of them are in the green cluster. And then we also found this. This is the agricultural university in Athens that has a little, like a significant green part in there in this cemented area. And just to go back and show you, in each one of the clusters, we could also see the types of species that were found. So kingdom, phyla, classes, we have all this information, and we could see what is found where and try to make sense where this is coming from. Of course, most of them are in the urban green cluster, as we would expect. And the work can be found here. In the, it has been published in Landscape Ecology. So you can see more of the discussion there. And, I will just stop because we don't have so much time. We'll just stop here and take more questions later.
Many thanks, Kriti. Unbelievable work. With so many details, and I mean, really deepen into the roots, I mean, also of the situation, because unless until we do not understand what is really the environment, what's going on, then it's difficult to take actions. Also, to work to find the right direction also for innovative solutions. I think, yes, we're going to have, quite a few number of questions, after in the panel discussion. Now is the time of the Transformer project, the other sister project of ARSINOE. And Transformer will show us, demo sites, the West Country demonstrator sites, and other based solutions for nutrient mitigation, climate change adaptation, and biodiversity co-benefits. I like, this final word, co-benefits, is pretty interesting. And so I welcome Emily Wedicombe and Gilles Ricard for taking the floor and inspiring us with the experience of the Transformer project. Thank you so much.
Hi everyone, thank you. Unfortunately, Giles is unable to join us today, so it'll just be myself. But I'm Emily Widdicombe. I work on Transform AR as a project manager, and I'm quite new to the world of water management. So please forgive me if I can't answer questions as in depth as some of my colleagues possibly could. But I'm really enjoying learning more about it. I'll just share my screen and presentation now. Okay. Oh. Can you, I guess that's not in presentation mode. Oh, can you see that in presentation mode now?
Yes, absolutely.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you. So yeah, as I said, I work for West Country Rivers Trust. I'm a natural capital project manager. And so first I'll give a bit of an overview about the Transform AR project, just in case people aren't aware of what the goals of that project are. And then I'll provide a bit of information about the UK policy context, which is really important when thinking about the West Country region and demonstrator sites. Then I'll talk you through a few of the nature-based solutions at those demo sites, and then go on to discuss those really important biodiversity and climate adaptation co-benefits that result from the work we do. Great. So Transform AR project is about achieving it's about accelerating and upscaling transformational adaptation in Europe. So it's really about achieving that deep-rooted climate adaptation that's lasting and sustainable, with a particular focus on water-related innovation. So really looking at the kind of role of water management in climate adaptation. That whilst we have a lot of multiple academic and practitioner partners, there are 6 key demo sites, and you can see on the map here, these are quite geographically diverse. So we have one in La Pirata in Finland, one in Guadalupe, one in Oristano, Galicia, Egaleo, and the West Country. And each of these are trialling quite different water-related innovation packages. So some are doing constructed wetlands, others are looking at sustainable drainage solutions, but in the West Country, we're looking at nature-based solutions. So yeah, as it says here, we're trialling different nature-based solutions and innovative financial mechanisms, such as green bonds, to achieve nutrient mitigation and climate adaptation. So we have these kind of 5 main goals, or 5 main project achievements. So firstly, trialling multiple kinds of nature-based interventions across priority sites, both to reduce phosphate pollution and deliver co-benefits for biodiversity, climate change adaptation, and for economic resilience. Secondly, we are working to accelerate and implement the uptake of regional green finance mechanisms, such as through the use of natural capital marketplaces, to help leverage greater funding from the private sector for nature-based solutions and nutrient pollution. Thirdly, and I'll come back to this in a minute because this relates to the UK policy context, but this work will help us to unlock key regional housing development, which is currently under a moratorium due to UK planning law, and we need to achieve nutrient neutrality in order to unlock that housing and help support local economies and communities. Fourthly, through this process, we are engaging and upskilling communities to create and commit to regional climate adaptation strategies. So these adaptation strategies are co-created with local communities to look in depth at critical issues in the region. So agriculture, biodiversity, and water management are the 3 we focused on. And finally, throughout, we are co-developing communities of practice, which will help us to embed principles of transformational adaptation, hopefully beyond the ostensible aims of the Transform AR project. As I mentioned, the UK policy context is quite critical to this picture. It's a little different in every single demonstrator, but as I'm from the West Country, this is the one I can speak to best. And I'll be using our demo sites as kind of a case study throughout this presentation. So in March 2022, the UK government legislated to try and tackle water pollution. And they did this by implementing what has become known as nutrient neutrality. So this means that all nutrient waste from new building developments has to now be offset. So we can't add any new nutrient pollution to water bodies. And in SSIs and SACs, so SSIs are special are sites of special scientific interest, and SACs are special areas of conservation. This has meant, so these are highly protected habitats and sites. This has forced a ban on housing development until that nutrient neutrality can be achieved. So over the long term, the government is looking at funding for things like upgrading sewage treatment works and other measures like engineering measures, which will reduce water quality, water pollution over the long term. But in the immediate term, they've legislated in this way, however, haven't provided much funding to get this done. So unfortunately, funding for immediate term nature-based or green engineering measures is insufficient for the desired water quality improvement. So this is kind of where Transform AR fits into this UK policy context, because local authorities and private sectors are now responsible for achieving nutrient neutrality and unlocking this vital regional housing, which is requiring innovative financial approaches to leverage greater funding for nature-based solutions. It's also worth mentioning that in addition to this nutrient neutrality legislation, the UK has also introduced new biodiversity laws, which means that all new planning applications now have to achieve a 10% biodiversity uplift. And whilst this is a very good thing, but again, it's kind of a way to force developers to consider how to achieve both nutrient neutrality and biodiversity in planning applications going forward. So it's quite hard to achieve against this backdrop, because it's sort of like the government have put all of the responsibility into the third sector and the private sector. So yeah, there's a lot of different things we need to be doing to respond to this and achieve the aims we need to achieve. So I'll quickly give an overview of the West Country region for people that don't know. So it's the southern and westernmost part of the UK, that little foot of Britain. It's home to approximately 5.6 million people. It's a primarily agricultural region with which is predominantly determined by livestock farming. So we have a lot of different habitats here. So we've got 15 national parks with enormous habitat diversity, including coastline, moorland, etc. And the Transform AR sites that we're looking at in the West Country are designated as both those SSIs and SACs that I mentioned earlier. And so these are protected under the UK habitats and species regulations. So as I mentioned before, each demonstrator region has various different climate pressures that they will need to respond to, which will change how they develop their climate adaptation strategies. So in our region in particular, research suggests that we're going to see a greater frequency of hotter, drier summers. We're going to see much more intensive and torrential downpours. We're going to have a greater frequency of milder, wetter winters, and further rises in the sea level around the coastline. And the issues we have already on the landscapes here intensify these problems. So at the moment, we're struggling with poor soil quality and soil compaction due to intensive agricultural practices. These agricultural practices also mean that we have poor landscape level water retention, which that kind of all results in communities being quite vulnerable and having low climate change resilience. So the negative impacts resulting from these are kind of increased soil erosion, diffuse water pollution, the risk of flood events, eutrophication and biodiversity loss, which obviously really closely relates to the water pollution issues that we're looking at, and that threat to safety and well-being of local communities and the threat to the local economy. With such a heavy dependence on agriculture in the region, it's really important that we tackle these issues. So in our West Country region, we've got a variety of demonstrator sites across the 3 counties. So we've got Somerset, Devon and Cornwall. And the priority catchments are the Camel, the Axe and the Tone and Parrot and Somerset levels. So across these sites, we've identified 9 potential sites in the Camel catchment down in Cornwall, 5 potential sites in the Axe and 2 in Somerset. But for the purpose of this presentation, I'm just going to focus in on one key site in Camel, which is Slaughter Bridge. So here in Slaughterbridge, we are looking at various nature-based solutions for nutrient mitigation. So these culminate in the creation of a wetland buffer strip, which includes the creation and management of riparian woodland, the establishment of a new hedgerow boundary to stop from land runoff into the water. We're going to be digging scrapes to capture some of that sediment, that nutrient-rich sediment. We're going to be restoring the natural wetlands. You can probably see in these images that this ground is already quite wet, quite a boggy area. So we'll be really trying to enhance that. And we'll be reconnecting the watercourse, which has unfortunately, due to human interventions, soured and become, much more powerful and much more likely to risk flooding downstream. So each of these interventions obviously have great, the ostensible aim is that they will mitigate nutrient pollution, but obviously they have a lot of co-benefits with that. That's the beauty of nature-based solutions. It's kind of, well, as you know, replicating natural processes. So it really helps to uplift some of the other positive effects we want to see in the landscape. So for instance, here, each of these diagrams helps to demonstrate how each nature-based solution delivers multiple co-benefits. So whilst we're managing riparian woodland chiefly to improve the water quality by filtering out those nutrients, managing that woodland helps to manage shade, which affects water temperature, which has positive impacts on fish spawning grounds, which is particularly important for protected species such as salmon, which have just made the red list. And in addition to that, it helps to stabilize riverbanks, which prevents loss of habitat resulting from erosion. So it helps to protect biodiversity that way. As I mentioned, it filters water, which improves water quality, which enhances the opportunities for aquatic life to thrive. Slower flows help to reduce the likelihood of flood events, which helps to protect both economies and communities further downstream. Another co-benefit that is unrelated or more tangentially related to biodiversity is that trees obviously help us sequester carbon, which has a positive impact on CO2 equivalent emissions. And the right trees in the right places also provide cultural ecosystem services, so enhancing the aesthetic value of our local landscapes. And finally, woody debris in the rivers helps to really capture that sediment and slow flows during rainfall events. So another one of those interventions I mentioned earlier was scrapes. So these are shallow ponds, shallow areas that we can dig out, which will form ephemeral water features in the winter and spring when we get a lot of rainfall here, but dry out in the summer months. And having those ephemeral water features helps to provide habitat for amphibians and invertebrates. It also helps to support herbaceous biodiversity because that creates habitat that's unlike the surrounding arable land. So it really encourages different plants to colonize those areas and hopefully increases insect life, things like that on the site. It helps economically because it by capturing those nutrients in sediment traps, you can then excavate those nutrients later and reuse them on farms, which helps farms to manage their nutrients more effectively and save money. It also helps to enhance and extend the duration of wet areas within fields, which slows the flow of water through the landscape, which helps to reduce flood risk by preventing, peak rainfall from causing flooding later on. And then finally, there are multiple bird species supported with a provide increased range of insect prey. I think that was the end of my slides. There's probably lots I missed out, but hopefully I'll see questions later. Thank you.
Many thanks, Emily. We're collecting questions. I mean, for the final session. Of the question and answer and discussion of the webinar. I quickly go into the next contribution from the Impetus project, and welcome Stelios Malougatis to speak about the Impetus supporting reforestation and biodiversity, a service to provide deforestation monitoring and restoration strategy. Thank you, Stelios. Please take the floor and give us.
Thank you, Edward. Thank you very much. So first of all, let me share my screen. Hopefully you can see my screen now. So I have to thank you again on behalf of Impetus for inviting us back in those series and also for inviting us as part of Impetus to present our work regarding reforestation biodiversity. So I'm Malougatis Stelios. I'm representing the Mediterranean Agronomic Institute of Chania, and I'm also part of Indigo Research Team, being led by Professor George Arabadzis. So if you're not familiar what Impetus is working on and what we're trying to tackle here, shortly, we're trying actually to protect communities and in general the planet from the climate change. How we're going to achieve that? First of all, Impetus is trying to locate and identify the areas that are mostly at risk, the more vulnerable. And what we're trying to do is actually to introduce transformative wave of reducing climate vulnerability and to promote some resilience where it's mostly needed in those areas. So in that context, this project we're having 7 demonstration sites. You can see them here, and our developments are focusing around the Mediterranean basin, especially in the Attica region. I mean, in the same area where Professor Laspidou presented, but in all the region. So briefly, what we are doing in order to support deforestation and biodiversity, our goal is to produce a service based on remote sensing and machine learning algorithms. And our first aim is to monitor plant biodiversity, and as I will explain later on, mainly forest, what is being characterized as forest land use. And also, we're trying to identify specific tree species in those forested areas. Based on that outcomes and this recognition we're trying to do, our aim also is to provide guidelines for successful restoration practices where biodiversity degradation is being spotted. So what we're trying to do is to provide specialized and localized restoration solutions in each area we're studying. Inside Impetus, and that where it's being developed by the National Technical University of Athens, it's an Attica region digital twin where it's being developed, and our service is going to be part of that. So what we're trying to monitor, first of all, we think it's valuable to narrow down where we're trying to monitor, and trying to monitor the whole biodiversity, it's impossible. Okay, so what we're trying to do is to plant biodiversity in order to map, first of all, deforestation, changes over time, and how we're going to do that. So firstly, we identify what are the metrics and the measurements that we're going to monitor. In order to do that, we're using open access public datasets. And as they were introduced before, it's based on Copernicus, especially ESA Sentinel-1, and now at our latest update, Sentinel-1 also. And we're also using Corinne and Lucas dataset. What's special about those? If you're familiar with remote sensing, this is a common Sentinel image. This is just above the Attica region. This is the Attica region, and there's some products. That's just an NDVI, and that's an EVI. Those are vegetation indexes. So we're using Sentinel images in order, firstly, to identify the land uses. And by meaning the land uses, we need to identify when a land use is being changed. Meaning that if we're having a forest area back in 2018, and when we're checking back in 2024, let's say, if there's not vegetation anymore, that's for us a change. And that's an area that we need to provide a restoration practice. So in order to produce and be able actually to monitor what we're providing as an edge result, we need some ground truth data. And those are coming in the form of Corinne dataset and also, the Lucas dataset. As I told you at the beginning, first of all, we need to monitor where the forest change is happening, but also to identify the forest tree species. And this last part is not an easy task to do. First of all, because terms and terms like phenology and seasonal change being introduced to vegetation, and that makes species recognition extremely difficult by using just remote sensing. So what we need to add to that is ground truth. And because the Attica region is a big area, and we need a data set that can be replicated in another area and address this data set address another area. Let's say if we want to replicate this tool in Spain, we have to have a data set that can also address this area. So that's why we're using Lucas, which is a sampling data set. Actually, there's a team going around Europe doing point sampling and recording what there is in a specific point in a specific area. So for us, it's a really valuable ground truth. So using those data sets and many produced by them, what we're doing, actually, we've produced some algorithms, machine learning and AI ones, using image segmentation mainly, in order to, first of all, identify where we're having forest loss. Secondly, what kind of vegetation we're losing. And those two will be used as an input in order to propose the appropriate restoration strategies. In this link, I don't know if I have time now. If you can access the presentation afterwards, you can see the forest change detector working live on some datasets. So, how we are going to produce the restoration strategies and how they are going to be localized. By the Ministry of Environment and Energy in Greece, we were handling some documents from previous restoration studies. And from that, we extracted all the data we needed in order to perform an ecological evaluation. This is what it's being done in Greece for many, many years. And based on what is being a practice in Greece, we're going to train a decision model in order to produce in a fast manner restoration strategies for the decision makers and stakeholders to have in mind. So, as I told you, we're going to feed this model. We're using what we can actually, because as it was being addressed before, data is an issue, especially data in a process that takes a lot of time to happen, like a restoration process. And especially here in Greece, at least, a process that is not well documented, or at least it's not easy to access due to the bureaucracy. Hopefully, this will be resolved soon, and we'll be able to have more and more data in order to make our modeling better and better. So that's all from me. Hopefully, I got some time. And thank you very much.
Many thanks. Thank you. Thank you, Stelios, for the quick but intensive contribution, from the Impetus project. Now we go back to the ARSINOE project and with a case study, the case study 6. And I give the floor to Maria Parskif. She will speak, about evaluating the resilience of biofiltration bacteria. Thank you.
Thank you. So, hello everyone. I am Maria, and today I will summarize the work of my team that have been done on evaluating the resilience of biofiltration bacteria. We are representing the Romanian National Institute for Biological Science, which is a partner in ARSINOE project. We are working under the case study 6, Black Sea, the sub case Danube Delta. Allowed me very briefly to introduce you the Romanian contribution in ARSINOE. The core research activities that we are performing are related with two innovative technology. technologies. One is related with investigation of the bacteria present in the Danube Delta, with the purpose of identifying those species that are involved in the natural biofiltration process. And the second innovative technology is related with developing alternative farming technologies on soils with different problems, or soils affected by either high salinity or high level of aridity. Both of these directions are very important for our sub-case here in Romania, because they are critical for the capacity of the Danube Delta to adapt in face of the climate changes that already are installed here. We are in a region with high sensitivity. As you know, the Danube Delta is a protected area, and in fact, in this region, we are counting on these natural biofiltration processes to allow the ecosystem to provide the services for the people. So together with our Romanian partner, the Black Sea University Network, we developed a very, let's say, cycling working program in order to achieve our objectives. Now, you should know, in our activities related with the consultation of the stakeholders in the region, biodiversity came in front for our purpose, our challenge here in the Danube Delta, which is how to keep or how to provide water quality and enough water for the isolated localities that we have here. So discussing with the stakeholders about the problems and the challenges, we put in front, in fact, how the biodiversity can contribute to the resilience of this sensitive area for the climate change. So what was the plan for us to achieve the objectives? So on biofiltration activities, we established with our partners several monitoring points on the Danube channels, and applying the technique of flow cytometry, we monitorize monthly the microorganized density in these points, and in parallel, my colleagues specialized in microbiology separated and growth microbiota from water and from the roots of the aquatic plants, because both of them are involved in the natural biofiltration processes. And these isolated species have been used for both calibrating the cytometer in our monitoring activities to see where else these species are present across the Danube Delta. And then on the other side, for this species, we extracted the DNA in order to precisely identify them. So for the identification of this species, we utilize DNA sequences, an externalized service, and now we have the phylogenetic tree representing the clusters of microorganisms that are present and activate in the monitoring points that we were working on. So the work that is in progress now is that our colleagues specialized in genetics are searching in thousands of sequences that we have now, to see if there are some of sequences related to the adaptive metabolic pathways of these microorganisms compared with pure microorganized. And in the rest part of the ARSINOE project, we will search, now having this phylogenetic tree, we will search this microorganized across different points on the Danube Delta. Biodiversity is also important in our work related with developing alternative agriculture technologies on quite affected soils here in the Danube Delta. And why is that important is because, first of all, we have two objectives with this alternative farming. The first one is to make use of these affected soils to produce species that can be interested for the local economy. But in the same time, we are looking to restore the capacity of these soils to allow traditional crops maybe in the future. So right now this work is in progress. We are in fact applying the same procedures that we use to identify the macrobiota in the biodiversity in the water and for those bacteria that are involved in biofiltration, just to allow us to understand if in these 4 years of the project on the soils that we are working with, we have this opportunity to improve the biodiversity and and to restore the capacity of this soil to accept other species, other plants that might be of interest for this region. Thank you for this opportunity to share with you what we have done here in Romania. Thank you.
Many thanks, Maria. Thanks a lot. We are now, it was, the last presentation for the webinar. And now we have, a bit of time because we are really behind the schedule for a quick discussion, because we had, a number of questions coming from the audience. But I was really surprised also the matter that day by day there are also new things that are being learned, by everybody. I think that also from the presentation of Emily, I found, interesting approaches, on this verse about, the law on the new buildings, and it's quite interesting. This approach that forces from the beginning of the design of the infrastructures, like building, thinking to biodiversity, thinking to the need that we have to change something. But I have a question for I don't know who can reply. For sure, biodiversity it is something that we need to protect. At global and territorial level, and this is it is clear. We have seen case studies, demo cases, experiments, and so on. Now, in your opinion, and this is a question that I asked all of you, what do you see? Are the main barrier and the main push, the first hindering, the capacity of our society to achieve within, our large concept of the water smart society, enough attention to biodiversity, and at the same time, what is, the triggering factors that can facilitate instead our capacity of preserving, but not only preserving, restoring biodiversity in our society?
Can I say?
Of course, because you are very much welcome.
All right. Yeah, so from my experience, these days I get a chance to meet with various either ministers or high-level people. I really see biodiversity is low, really low in the agenda. People really do not comprehend. It is not tangible. It's not easy to see the effects, and they prefer to deal with something more visible, and more, I find it difficult that some ministry will spend a lot of money, a lot of funds on the issue of biodiversity, because, as I said, they don't see it. It doesn't sell, if you wish. So this is at the local level in our societies. In the bigger scheme of things, if you think about climate change, it's all about energy and emissions. If you follow the IPCC, for example, I mean, even at the international intergovernmental scale, biodiversity is mostly addressed by the IPBES. So IPBES, on the one side, the Intergovernmental Panel of Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, and on the other side, the IPCC, with only one green scenario. If you look at the SSPs, there is one green, and then you have all the others, emission this, emission that. Nature gets little attention, even in the international scale. So I also feel that with energy and emissions, biodiversity is a bit lost between the lines. We have this project that we are running called BioNext, which is focusing on biodiversity and on the IPBES and on the nexus, water, energy, food, ecosystem, biodiversity at the center, and looking at all the other interlinkages. And you see that, and we go through a lot of focus groups and try to see change, how to provoke change. And it is very difficult. So there is a lot of resistance. There is a lot to be done. So how do we change that? I would say, capacity building, it has to start with that. It has to start with people understanding, and then slowly interjecting and changing our philosophy about nature. I'm always very excited about the Nature Futures framework. It's a framework that talks about nature and showcases that when we relate with nature, we only relate as like nature for society. What can nature do for me? So we see nature really serving us. We don't see ourselves as part of this. We are not, it's the outside, and it's us trying to do our development and stuff. We don't see ourselves as one with nature, as part of it. And this is also part of our consumption patterns, our identity, ecological identity. So a lot of philosophy here, not much, tangible truth, but really, I feel that one of our missions has to be to raise biodiversity in the agenda and start combining IPBES and IPCC activities or forums in order to really start speaking about nature and the benefits. People don't see it. That's at the bottom of it. Thank you.
Thank you. So I understand that there is also there is an important portion of activities to be done in terms of stakeholder engagement, because and this goes back also to what Europe advocate for territorial water ecosystem sustainability. We're working on water-oriented living labs because that is the place where everybody is supposed to sit around the same table and having a common understanding on the challenges. But biodiversity is something that it is somehow hidden. That it is, yes, it is correct. Energy emissions takes most of the attention also on the media. But then when it goes to the other hidden pockets, of the impact of the anthropogenic activities on the planet, that biodiversity becomes something that is almost unknown. But this is also something that, in my opinion, is also the responsibility of the decision-making people, because then there need also for political commitment, and because the political commitment can also mobilize resources like investment for changing things, including biodiversity. So I think that there is the need for what is called transformational change.
Yes.
Using, the outputs of the research and innovation efforts, like projects, like ARSINOE, like Impetus, like Transforma, and others projects. But then we need also to touch, the people that are, let's say, in the room of the buttons, because in order to make them understand that there is the need for acting also on biodiversity, which it is part of the program for having a water smart society. But then there's also a big push also from the common people, let's say from the users, from the citizens. And
there is the nature restoration law, which brings us some hope that maybe, it's very new, and I'm feeling this might be the instrument maybe to really mobilize societies that they have to do something, they really need to restore. Okay,
that is true. And there is a question that for Emily, because I was, impressed by, this activity that then enters into create relations with the users. How do you see the participation of citizens, or let's say common people, the civil society organizations, in contributing to advocate for increasing, for protecting, for restoring biodiversity?
Yeah, the citizens are very important. The citizens are critical in this, but those are also very difficult. One of the experiences we had is that also the citizens are very difficult to engage. So it's not so simple. We say citizens should be interested, but they're not. There is a lot of strategy that needs to go into finding some benefit for them and keeping them engaged. We do this now through schools. We found a way through schools with the kids, and I think this is a very good way to do it. And again, then the quality of data. You have all these issues, the privacy issues, GDPR. The quality of data needs to be verified. But we are trying with the digital tools. We have quite a bit in our hands to, automatically recognize the species, and I find this a very, very interesting activity for young people, in school, to start learning what is out there. Even me as an adult makes me interested to go find some species or some bird or some bug. So this might be a good one, but we should not underestimate the difficulty of engaging people and keeping them engaged. Let's not consider that people will go out running and collecting data for us. That we need to develop a very solid strategy with a win-win to give something back to the people, whatever that might be.
You're absolutely right, and I think that using different words is that we have to create the offer that nobody can refuse, and the offer is a matter that we are going we are going to win all instead of losing all, because in a scenario of the next, in 2030, where there are forecasting to say that 56% of the demand of water will not be met. But this is, the scaling figure. But if we translate this then into the problem of the biodiversity, it will be even worse. So then in the end, maybe that we should use the leverage of the matter that we are going to win all if we change things, and we are going to lose all if we don't. But I think that there is a need also for entering into a very capillary modality and entering into the cities, into the communities, and creating all the conditions and the knowledge and the awareness for pushing for biodiversity and for water smart society. There are a number of questions. We are really behind the schedule, and but at the same time, we have your email addresses, so we will address you the question coming from the audience, that you can have also a bit more time for responding in a more quiet condition without being pushed by the time. And well, I don't know if there are other topics to be discussed or highlighted. Otherwise, I mean, if discussion is over, well, I mean, thank you so much. It is clear that we need to push a lot for biodiversity, and at the same time, I mean, it is also we have also understood that biodiversity represents well, an hidden pocket of a large problem, but at the same time, I mean, this hidden problem, this is the pocket of the problem, can create much more damages and have much more implications that we think. And well, once again, thank you all for your contribution and participation. Many thanks to the projects of that contribute to this webinar on biodiversity, to the working group on water and biodiversity of Water Europe, and to you all and to my colleagues that contributed, Anka, Isabella, and others that contribute to make this webinar successful. Thank you so much. We're going to have another webinar, I mean, in a few months from now, so we'll be all informed. And well, I mean, enjoy the day, and all the best. Many thanks once again for your efforts. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.